Senator Marco Rubio says it makes no sense for foreign-born visa holders to remain in the U.S. if they glorify the killing of Charlie Kirk. The State Department agrees, warning it will revoke visas of anyone praising violence against political figures. Mike, should celebrating an assassination online be grounds for losing your visa?
So I'm going to give you a mixed answer to this. There's part of me that agrees and part of me that disagrees. And what I mean by that, in this case, I think that is also a no bueno. And I'm going to tell you why. Because Charlie Kirk is not a political figure by definition, meaning he is not the president of the United States. He is not a congressman. He's not a. So let's hypothetically say the president was killed or a senator was killed. And somebody said, "Oh, I'm glad to see that happen," blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we should send him out. That's part of when you sign your visa paperwork to come into the United States as a foreigner, there is a code of ethics that you have to meet. And so I do believe that we have the right as a United States to send people or revoke visas based on things that they could say about politicians or political things. Charlie Kirk was the CEO of Turning Point and was a influencer and a podcaster. No, I do not think that you could. No, I to me is a separation. I maybe miscorrectly said that last week where I said Charlie Kirk wasn't powerful. What I meant was he's not powerful in government. He doesn't have a legal right to something. Very powerful in speech, but there's a difference. There's a big difference between a popular guy,
Yeah.
and a representative of the United States of America. He is not a representative of the United States of America. Therefore, I don't think the government has any right to throw somebody. That would be like saying, if I don't know, they fucking executed the CEO of Starbucks and be like, and they said bad things. We're going to throw you out because of that. No, that doesn't make any sense.
I agree with you, but kind of like from a different direction, Mike. Like, I agree about him not being a politician and everything, but I just feel like it shouldn't be a specific directive from Marco Rubio about this particular incident. It should just be a known fact that if you come to America
Yes.
and you're on a visa,
Yes.
you don't talk about nothing.
Yes.
Mind
Exactly.
your business, shut up, enjoy the country.
Well, so here's my fear, Phil, is exactly what you just said. Instead of saying you need to obey a code of ethics and a code of honor when you come to the United States as a visa holder, which they do say, by the way, it's written in the paperwork. Instead of just simply saying that, what I feel like is happening is that the government under Trump is organizing a new. They'll probably come up with a name because that's what Trump likes to do.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of Doge, we're going to
get a Charlie Kirk something before this admit something.
Yes. Well, even worse than that, it's going to be like the department of you're going against what we say and you're going to get fired department. That's what it feels like they're going to set up. No,
Mike, it's so funny that they might hear this and actually use it. Like, that's cool. The young kids, they might do that shit.
Yep. And I think that's a scary slope. And one of the reasons I tend to, and I'm going to admit out loud, one of the reasons I probably had some affinity is not the right word. When I was listening to the Charlie Kirk stuff, is that because he was doing what we did. I have an affinity for media and podcasters and people that are influencers because I do that myself. So I very much appreciate people trying to influence people, and I get that is not necessarily. You have to take that for what it is. Whether you're listening to Charlie Kirk or you're listening to me and Phil, there's a slant. And in our podcast, we try to keep it as unslanted as possible. But we still look, we're humans. We still have opinions.
And we also start this podcast with a disclaimer. The
Yes.
opinion you follow should be your own. Just
Yes.
consider this uh, I forget what I say.
Yeah. But let's take 2 minutes to explain. I mean, I really firmly believe that, and the reason I do this podcast is because I hope that at least one person will glean a bit of information from the two of us that they didn't, or they weren't aware of, or they didn't think about. So for me, it's an educational thing, and I'm not trying to convince you to necessarily be exactly like me, or I don't want you necessarily to be exactly like Phil, but I hope that we bring some amount of clarity, maybe to some of the issues, or at least we say something that you'll be like, oh God, I don't agree with him at all on that, but it makes you think.
That's what I want.
Yes, it's the thinking part.
I want people to hear me and not take my word for it. Be like,
go
oh,
research.
I haven't heard that before. Maybe let me go look.
Yes.
I don't want you to believe me.
Agreed. And so for me, that's my I get the joy out of doing this by hoping that there's at least one person that gets something out of it educationally, and enriches themselves by going and doing their own research and coming to their own conclusion. Don't listen to what I got to say. Earlier I said I listened to Charlie Kirk on a podcast with a bunch of porn stars. Don't listen to what I got to say about it. Go listen to it yourself. You make your own judgment on it. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just here to pass along what I see myself. And that's kind of what
I think we're setting an example, Mike. I mean, in so many different ways, I think we're setting an example. We don't always agree.
Nope.
But we ain't called each other out our names. We get to the end of the podcast, we debrief, we go places, we meet up, we party.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Contrary to popular belief, Phil and I actually talk outside of the podcast, and we do a little episode summary after we get done and talk about stuff. And sometimes, and admittedly, I mean, I'm not gonna, we don't lie, right? There are things that we don't say on the podcast sometimes. Sometimes it's because we agreed beforehand. Let's not go down that road. And sometimes it's like we've both. I think a lot of times we agree and we're like, yeah, that's we don't really
just be bland.
Yeah, so there's some discussion about that, but
which is something else I don't like, Mike, that I see in a lot of these things. The people will be like, I'm on this side, and both of the guys are just cheerleading the whole time. You're not hearing no dissent, no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is gross.
I mean, I gotta be. Sometimes sometimes I'll listen to the podcast and I'll be like, God, I don't even agree with what I said. I'll be like, you know what? I got to go to next week. I got to change my mind on that and say something different.
Same here, bro. They're like, oh, I should have shut up. Do you know how many times, Mike? And I got a pretty much perfect track record. Unless something happened in the middle of the show, what you guys are watching, what you guys are listening to is what happened from beginning to end.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of edit.
But during the edit, there has been many a times where I wanted to cut something out I said.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, occasionally Phil will put up an advertisement for the podcast, too. I go, oh, damn, I can't believe I said that. But
I give you credit, Mike, because I've even told you, I'll be challenging you with those edits, and you have never said, no, don't put that out. So hats off to you on that.
I like to be real, and I also wish more people were like us from a standpoint of I think that we'd have less shootings going on. I think if people actually, words are very powerful. So, mm-hmm. I like to believe that the way of fighting somebody that you don't like is give the counter opinion. So if somebody's standing for XYZ, whether it's like, they're anti-free choice as an example in abortion, well, give your counter opinion. Give us your strong argument on the other side. I mean, to me, that's a dialogue. Shooting the guy because he thought, because he's religious on one side, that don't really make any sense. If anything, and I think I hate to say this out loud. I don't even like using this word, but he's become a martyr at this point. He's made, like I said at the top of the podcast, he's made Donald Trump stronger. Clearly, if you did not support Charlie Kirk, it's very unlikely that you support Donald Trump. So at the end of the day, you've made your position weaker rather than having a discourse and talking about it. Give us your side. And that's my biggest pet peeve. And I know we've turned the podcast into over the last year a ranting about the Democrats, but a lot of that is my frustration with you need to come up with an argument other than I hate Donald Trump. Like that argument is, please, God, come up with something.